but we want to do the right thing. And so we started with the hardest question of all. The hardest question of all, and that's why I started with it, because I want this to just sit on us for a while during this series. The first question we ask is, am I being completely honest with myself? Am I telling myself the truth? As I evaluate these options, I'm kind of leaning in this direction, but am I being completely honest with myself? And we said the very first week, we are all incredible salespeople when it comes to selling ourselves on a bad idea. That was week one. Then last week, we asked this question: what story do I want to tell? What story do I want to tell? Because as we said last week, every season of your life eventually is nothing more than a story you tell. The story of high school, the story of college, the story of my first marriage, the story of my first child, the story of my time in Detroit, the story of that first job, the story of my career. Eventually, time goes by, and every single decision-making, oh my gosh, what am I going to do environment, eventually is nothing more than a story that you tell. So we said, when making a decision looking into the future, make that decision as if you're looking back on it. What story do you want to tell? And then today's question is this one. The third question is this: is there a tension, T-E-N-S-I-O-N, is there a tension that needs my attention? Is there a tension that needs my attention? Let me explain what I mean by that. Oftentimes when we're making decisions, and generally there are just two options when we make decisions, but sometimes there are three or four. Oftentimes in making a decision, one of the options that we're considering, regardless if it's financial, relational, business, family, whatever it might be, oftentimes we will lean into an option where there is a moral or ethical dilemma. And oftentimes it's not big and overt. It's not like, should I rob a bank or should I go to work? Should I rob, honey, what do you know? It's not like that kind of stuff, right? It's should I kill my boss? Or, it's not that major. Oftentimes in the options that we are evaluating, there is a very subtle moral or ethical dilemma or tension that's buried way down in the complexity of the details. And as we begin considering a certain option, there's something on the inside of us that's kind of like, I don't know about that. When I grew up, the world I grew up in and the church I grew up in, they would call it a check in your spirit. Do you have a check in your spirit? We don't use that kind of terminology. A check in your spirit, it meant that in your spirit there was kind of I don't know about that. Maybe you've heard it referred to as a red flag. I think there's some red flags associated with that. Maybe it's your conscience. If you're a Christian, you may say it's the Holy Spirit. If you're of some other faith, there may be some other kind of religious connotation. But we all know what it's like when you start considering an option and there's just a slight little bit kind of tiny hesitation because there's an element of that option, there's an element of going in that direction that's just not exactly right. That's the tension.